97.3 ESPN.com. Sixers insider Michael Kaskey-Blomain going to join us now. He's got a report out there suggesting that the Sixers looking to extend the contract of Robert Covington. Mixed reviews, I guess, from people who don't understand the game. But if you really understand basketball, this is a deal that's a no-brainer, right, Mike? I mean, this is something that the Sixers should do. This is a guy that on good basketball teams, when you put a team together, when push comes to shove, this guy, this type of player is on those teams.
Absolutely, Mike. I think it's like you said in the lead-in, it's basically a no-brainer. He's a guy that I think the team wants, and rightfully so, to just have around, moving forward, whether that be in a starting role or whether that be, in a rotational role coming off the bench. He is just that type of guy, like you said, that good, solid playoff teams are built on. He can play, both ends of the ball. He's developed into an excellent perimeter defender. He can space the floor. He's athletic. Pretty much everything you want in a perimeter player in today's NBA.
Yeah, I kind of likened him to what envisioning him in the role. Not that they play the same style, but envisioning him in the role that Golden State uses Iguodala, like where his offense is a bonus, but Covington morphing into your defensive stopper and really the guy who defines who you are as a team defensively. Yeah,
absolutely. I think he's taken, huge strides in that area over the past, 3 seasons, really, since he signed here. He was, pretty much considered as basically just a floor spacer, a three-point shooter that first season. And I think over the past 2 years, he's really taken strides to, I think he realized that if he wants to stick in this league and really, have a role going forward, that he needed to be more so than just a one-trick pony, as they say. And I think he's really put in the work the past couple of years to, develop into that guy that can, like you said, kind of be like a multifaceted forward in the role of Iguodala, whether he's coming in and playing the 4 spot, playing the 3, playing the 2, starting, coming off the bench. There's just a lot of different ways that he can be used, and I think it's wise of the Sixers to try to lock him down for a few more years.
MKB's with us, Mike. Give the listeners out there who are like, dude, this guy stinks. Why are you guys discussing, why would the Sixers want to extend him? First, on the defensive side, what are some of the things that stand out about him defensively that maybe if you're just a stats or numbers guy, or you just watch a game and see, he shot 3 of 11, why is his defensive prowess so important?
I think the main thing would probably be his versatility, Mike. That's huge in today's NBA where teams, are prone to go small. There's so much reliance on the pick and roll and offense, and the ability to stretch the floor. And in Covington, you have a guy that can, comfortably guard 3 spots on the floor, really, whether it be, either the forward spot, small forward, power forward, or even a 2 guard. He's it's not an ideal matchup, but he's, capable of guarding, a lot of the 2 guards in the league on switches and things like that. And having a guy like that out on the floor, it just, adds so much versatility to what the Sixers are able to do on that end, through switches and things like that. And I think he just really, he opens up their defense a lot. I think Brett Brown obviously said, multiple times throughout this season how important that Rob is to what they, were really able to do on the defensive end, especially when Joel is back there protecting the paint, to have a premier wing defender out there on the perimeter. It just makes it, doubly tough on the opposing offense.
So, when I think what the people out there who look at this move as a negative or negatively, they're looking at this as why, it's that he is associated, guilty by association, of the first 3 years of the process, right? It's, hey, he was on those teams, they stunk, and he stinks with them. How does he fit in with a team that has Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and Dario and, insert draft choice here? Where does he kind of fit in with the new crop of players?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. Obviously, I think, his role is yet to be defined. Obviously, I think a lot of that will depend on where the ping pong ball is bounced tomorrow and what the team feels like doing in free agency. But I think he certainly is a guy that's going to be in the rotation, top 7 guys, whether it be off the bench or come in, starting for, the time being, as a guy that has some experience. But, I think I've been a little bit higher on Covington than a lot of people have throughout his tenure with the team. But, for me, I just see, like you said, he's representative of the process, but he's representative of the process in a positive way, as in like this is a perfect example of a guy that was kind of unknown, kind of a cast off previously before joining the Sixers. And he just really developed into, a guy that whatever his role is, obviously he'll be able to space the floor alongside playmakers like Simmons, and say we get, a guard, Fultz or Ball or whoever in the draft, just fits in nicely, sliding right in any of those perimeter spots, and is a guy that can, spread the floor for you. And no one ever complains about having a capable defender out on the floor either. So I think, there's just a magnitude of multiple ways that he can really impact the game, especially, and he seems like a guy kind of like Iguodala, how you referenced. He's a guy that I think would thrive with better talent around him too. He's not necessarily a guy that's going to carry a team like these past 3 years, like you kind of alluded to. The team was bad and he was on it. He's not a guy that's maybe going to go out there, get you 25 points a game, be your leading scorer, and carry the team to victory. But he is a guy that if he has some other talent around him and he can be, kind of a glue guy like Iguodala and a third, fourth option, he's a really, really good guy to have in that role.
Now, that being said, I mean, the shot is not where I guess, we had anticipated. I mean, he shooting, like 35% from three. I mean, I think we need to back off of him being this guy who's going to come in and be a consistent three-point shooter. What the Sixers are looking at him for is that defense. And with this team and where it's moving, I think the offense is secondary now. Whereas before, during the process group, that group of guys, he really was counted on to be the offense at times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going forward, the Sixers are going to make their bones on the defensive end. I think Brett Brown is made that really clear in the past few years that this is going to be a team that takes pride and bases a lot of its attack on the defensive end. And like you said, I think that's, the defender that Robert has kind of morphed into over the past few years is really where his value is now, as opposed to a couple of years ago when you said his name. His value was pretty much strictly derived from his ability to spread the floor and shoot the three. With that being said, I do think that he can, bounce back from what was a kind of a down shooting year for him last year. I think, he's definitely shown over the past several seasons that he's a capable shooter. I think it's just a matter of consistency. He was pretty, kind of streaky last season, a little bit up and down. I think, especially if a big money contract is, on the horizon for him, I think he'll be, pretty motivated this summer to get in there and kind of, just iron out that shot, maybe get it a little bit more consistent to complement that defense and really, really make him a potentially valuable piece for this team moving forward.
Hey, Mike, do you think Brian Colangelo and Brett Brown view him as a starter, or do they prefer him to be a sixth man or a seventh man? What is, in your opinion, their vision for Robert Covington? Because I think, people here extend Robert Covington. I'm like, they're not giving the guy a max deal. Relax here. Number one, what kind of deal, are they looking for, and how do they view him down the road now? I mean, he's been starting the last couple of years. So do they view him as one of their five, someone in their rotation, their sixth man? How do you see that?
I think right now, at least from Brett's perspective, I think they're looking at Rob as a guy that could be a starter. Like you said, he's been pretty much a consistent starter over the past 3 years, and there's so much of the roster is up in the air, going into next season as far as who we get in the lottery, what gets done in the off season. That there's obviously no roles specifically set in stone, but I really think that this team is looking at Rob as a guy that can, be a starter, at least in the short term. Well, maybe some of these other young guys continue to develop. He could play, whether it be a three or the four next to Joel next season. I think that's something that they would strongly consider. And then, as the younger guys and more prospects are added, with his versatility, it's something that a situation where maybe he could then, kind of bump to the bench and come off in that sixth, seventh role as a guy that's, bringing you offense and defense off the bench. So I think that it's certainly a possibility that he'd be looked at as a starter for this team, at least for next season.
Of the things he does, what stands out to you the most? What is something that the fans don't see that he does maybe that doesn't get the recognition because it's hard to quantify?
I would just say his IQ and his ability to read plays. I think that the best way you quantify that would probably be in his steals and deflections. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I know he's
number one in the league. He's number one in the league in deflections, and he's the only player other than Draymond Green that gets more than 4 deflections a game.
There we go. I think that's very, perfectly representative of his just IQ as a player, especially on the defensive end. He has a nose for the ball. He knows where to be. He's good at, breaking up plays and making things just generally uncomfortable for the offense. And like you said, you can't necessarily quantify that, but when you're watching him play, especially with other solid defenders around him, he really makes a difference on that end of the ball.
Well, you figure he gets 4.3 deflections. He's got 1.9 steals, another block, whatever. You add all those up, about how many baskets and how many possessions he prevents a basket from happening. And I think that's where people downplay the importance of a guy like this. Forget Robert Covington. Any player in the league who puts up those kind of defensive numbers in terms of taking possessions away, that I don't see how anybody can look at that. The one argument I got was, well, he plays a lot of minutes on a bad team. Of course he's going to have those kind of numbers. I'm thinking to myself, dude, are you serious? We're talking about defensive player here. You got to want and will to play defense. You don't just get defensive numbers because you're on a bad team getting a lot of minutes.
Yeah, you would actually think it would be the opposite. I mean, if a team is terrible, you would, tend to think that their defense would be bad. It's not like counting stats where it's, points and assists. I think, if anything, the fact that the team's defense and his specifically was able to kind of stand out despite their struggles, it's, I think it's a testament to how good he is. And just to throw in about his skill set, he's also an above-average rebounder for his position out of the small forward. He gave us, almost 7, I think 6.5 total rebounds a game last year, which is a career high, and that's a pretty solid output from a guy in the small forward spot. So that's another that goes to his he has a good nose for the ball and the instincts. I think that goes into his rebounding as well.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain's with us at The Real Mike KB on Twitter, and check out his piece on Robert Covington. The Sixers, according to Michael, are hoping to sign Covington to a contract extension this offseason. To be clear, Mike, he's in the final year of his deal. He's not a free agent, so they cannot do something. But they believe that as an unrestricted free agent next summer, he would have a lot of suitors.
Exactly. So basically, by doing an extension now, they avoid the risk of losing him on the open market next summer when he is a completely unrestricted free agent. He's set to make only $1.5 million this year coming up, which would be would make him one of the biggest bargains in the NBA based off what he's able to do. And then, after that, he would be positioned to, cash in considering his skill set and the way the league is going. So by locking him up now, the Sixers, basically keep control of him for, obviously there's no details yet on a potential extension, but, you would assume at least this season and 2 more after that with an extension. It's just good to have a player like that in your control. Obviously, they'll have a lot of spots to fill moving forward, and having a talented guy like that is a good thing to have.
Yeah, by the way, he averages 4.3 deflections, 1.9 steal, and a block. So that comes out to almost preventing 16 points a game on the defensive side. When you talk about turning possessions away, getting a block, getting a steal, getting a deflection, that's all things that deter the other team from scoring. It comes out to about 16 points. So shows you how important he is. Brett Brown said that Ben Simmons will not play Summer League. Joel Embiid will not either. Neither of those guys you want to see in Summer League, right? I don't want to see either of those guys in Summer League. Simmons more than Embiid. I certainly don't need to see Embiid play in the Summer League again.
No, I'm right there with you, Mike. I mean, obviously the fan in me would love to see them out dominating some of the rookies in Summer League, but there's absolutely no reason for either of them to play. I mean, if Ben hadn't played in Summer League at all last year, it would be a different story, but I think his talent level and his level of preparedness and what he's, aiming to accomplish in his career, there's really no need for him to even step foot on the court in Vegas this summer. Just keep the focus on training and getting as good ready as possible for the start of the preseason and regular season.
What's the lowdown on Furkan Korkmaz? He wants to come play. He's another situation similar to Dario. In fact, I think they play on the same Turkish team. He was, for those of you who don't know who he is, he was the 26th pick last year. He was recently named the best young player of the Basketball Champions League. There's been some talk that he wants to come play. It doesn't seem realistic, but what's the lowdown on him?
Yeah, Mike, that's another great question. That's another factor playing, that's kind of a little bit flying under the radar right now for the Sixers next season. I mean, Korkmaz is a guy that obviously, like you said, much like Dario, has kind of been gaining a reputation for himself over in the Turkish league, and is kind of excelled. I think even a little bit faster than was initially expected when he was drafted last year. I heard was the same. What you said, basically, is interested in coming to the Sixers this year. It could be a similar situation with Dario. There'd probably be, some hurdles to get through. And then there's just the simple fact of where would he fit on the roster next season. Obviously, you're looking at, Simmons will be coming back, potential 1 or 2 lottery picks this year. It's still the development of TLC, Covington coming back. I mean, there's a lot of Dario himself. There's definitely a lot of guys in kind of that role already on the roster. So that's another factor in determining whether or not it would be a good idea for him to come over. But that's definitely something worth, keeping an eye on as the summer progresses, because he's another guy that looks like he could, kind of surprise some people and come over and contribute to the Sixers.
Tomorrow night, the level of importance of tomorrow night to you, I mean, is it just, hey, even if they just end up with the 6th pick, it's successful? How important is tomorrow night to this franchise?
I think it's pretty important, Mike. I think we talked about the other time. It's not that they can't necessarily lose, but they could certainly end up missing out on a whole lot of talent potentially based on the way the ping pong balls bounce. I think this lottery really has the potential to give the Sixers the last big boost kind of that they need to be in that contender status. If you were talking about adding 2 more high caliber players from this draft, whoever it may be, a pair of the guys that are ranked in the top 6 or 7, combining them with the talent that we've already seen start to develop in our young guys, you're looking at a very, very potentially dangerous and explosive young core. Whereas if you're just adding one guy, sure, you're not losing because you're getting Simmons back. Obviously, it's still built on Embiid, but at this point, it's, the way this position this year would be disappointing not to come away from this lottery with a pretty big haul, considering that starting next year, you're probably going to be looking to make a playoff push with this team. Our own pick is not probably going to be as high in the lottery as it could potentially be this year and other things. So I think this year would be really a great time to get one last, pretty big haul in the lottery before you really kind of just aim forward to the playoffs without looking back.
Yeah, we know at Sam Hinkie in the process, it all got mocked a lot. But if they end up with number 1 and number 4, or number 1 and number 5, this has a chance to be a scary, promising, and just an unbelievably deep team in one season's time. I mean, they could go from a 28-win team, if this all shakes out for them tomorrow night, to where? What is the best case scenario, and where does that potentially bring them?
I think a realistic best case scenario for next season is a 500 team, maybe a 41 team, which is that's a 13 game jump from a team that just made an 18 game jump. So I mean, you're looking at a huge exponential jump over the course of 2 seasons. But that's, like you said, I mean, that would be almost unparalleled if the Sixers do end up landing the 1st and, say, the 4th or 5th pick. The level of young, high lottery talent on one roster at one time would be, I would have to look back, but it would be very, very, uncommon in the history of the NBA. But when you're talking about, guys that are top 3 picks multiple years in a row that are still young, all on one roster, there's obviously the age thing and the chemistry thing, but just based off pure talent, a situation like that, you would have to think that this team would immediately be able to challenge for a playoff spot. And with a couple years of seasoning and, a couple roster tweaks and injections of veterans here and there, could be, on the fast track to contention. Obviously, that's the hope, and it's really something that, obviously health depending, obviously with Joel and hopefully Ben, but it's something that's it's more of a realistic possibility to talk about today than it was a couple years ago during the Sam Hinkie era.
We're talking with Michael Kaskey-Blomain from 97.3 ESPN.com at The Real Mike KB. In your mind, is the word process, the phrase process, and is that behind them, or are they still kind of executing it, or what? I mean, where do you see the process?
I think it's still in action. I think, a lot of people kind of declared it dead with the removal of Sam last year. But the thing with Sam's, quote unquote process was the length of it all along. And part of that process was the upward swing that I think we started to experience last year. And, we're going to hopefully continue to experience going forward. I think, well, especially as the team still continues to reap the benefits of the moves that Sam made. Obviously, this draft has, it's based directly off of moves that he made, whether it be the Lakers, the Lakers pick or the Kings, the pick swap or what have you. The team is still directly benefiting from Sam's move. So in that aspect, and I think that, if the timeline of when this was laid out, it was presented, in 2013 by, some as a 5-year plan. Obviously, we're still within that, that time frame there, and it's on the part where, you get to kind of the lowest point of what it was, gutting the team, and then you start to build back up. And I think we're on that upward swing. And I don't know, it's tough to say when the exact ending point of the process will be, but I think once maybe after this summer and this draft, when the entire core of all these young players is in place and the team is, building forward, I think that's when you could kind of say they're stepping out of the quote unquote process era and into the the new era of contention or whatever it's going to be called.
And I think one thing when you're watching the teams that are playing, specifically the Spurs and to some extent Golden State, the one of the things that Sam did and got mocked for was the stockpiling of second-round picks. And look in these series at how many second-round picks have played and have been contributing. I mean, San Antonio is filled with them. But all these teams seemingly have a couple of guys that were those second round, and that's something that the Sixers have really stockpiled is a ton of second round picks. So it was, about getting the top end talent, but also finding the glue guys all in one sweep, one big swoop of, hey, we need to do both. They didn't neglect that, and I think that's something that's not valued enough.
Yeah, right, Mike. That's a great point. And like you said, you can't watch a Spurs game and not notice how many guys are contributing that were, either D-League players or second-round picks or cast-offs of other teams. And like you said, I think that's absolutely something that Sam, had his focus on since he really started because, obviously the team is going to need, superstars and, lottery picks in order to, develop into the championship team. But like you kind of alluded to earlier with Robert Covington, you also need those guys that are glue guys that are going to, do the kind of the dirty work and fill in the other roles. And, you can't always get those guys on the market. A lot of the most successful teams in the league today, will continue to use the Spurs as an example, have, this homegrown talent that they identify as that could be good for their system and build them up through that. And that's that's a great model for franchises to follow. And I think that Sam and the Sixers did that, to an extent with all the second round picks. They see, there's a kind of a mold of guys they like, the long, athletic, versatile guys that can kind of play two ways. You take guys like that and then try to mold them into role players that could fit with the team going forward. And then, obviously you hit on some, they could be used as assets or parts of, the rotation going forward. But that's definitely, definitely something I think Sam, emphasized and kind of, as you said, he was sort of ridiculed for it, but certainly hasn't necessarily received the recognition for it.
All right, Michael, who wins tonight, Washington or Boston?
We were on the air the other day. I said Washington's going to win the series, so I think I got to stick with that. It's, I'm definitely looking forward to that game, obviously in Boston. But I think, there's a little more talent on the Washington side between Wall and Beal. I'm expecting them to pull it out.
All right. Tomorrow, very important night. You can hear the draft lottery on 97.3 ESPN and check out Michael's piece on Robert Covington over at 97.3ESPN.com and on Twitter at The Real Mike KB. All right, pal. Take care.
You too, Mike. Have a good one.